aquí me voy a dar la vuelta.
A magazine commissioned me to photograph a sunrise. For this I chose a place which I knew and loved, a vantage point in the Ayusco National Forest. I parked my car and waited for the dawn, when I recognized an orange-colored light down on the slope in front of me. My first thought was that it was a fire, but in the same moment I saw a yellow-orange dome rising in front of me, the dome of a large object. It was no fire. It was an unidentified flying object, a UFO. When I realized that I had a UFO in front of me, I grabbed my camera, which I had put on the seat next to me. This was a unique opportunity. I was very excited. I wanted to be sure that the picture doesn't blur when I exposed it. So I put the camera on the top of my steering wheel, held it firm in my hands and pressed the trigger. That's how I banned the object on film. Just when I transported the film, the engine of my car died off. First it was shaking, then the lights went off. In this moment I shot the second photo with a longer exposure time, when the object was moving upwards. Now I got even more excited, jumped out of the car, leaned on its door to have a support, and shot further photos before the object was shooting off with a high speed.
Estar insistiendo durante aproximadamente 2 meses y medio.
This experience never let me off. Again and again I drove back to Ayusco 30 or 40 times. One day, about 2.5 months later, the weather was bad, and when I came to the Ayusco area, I entered a fog bank. It was raining heavier and heavier. I turned the windshield wipers on. My headlights cut through the denser and denser fog. And when I came to a crossroads, I entered by mistake the wrong road. It took a while before I realized that I was on the wrong road. And when I was still searching for my vantage point, where I had my first encounter, I recognized an orange glow in the distance, the same glow I saw 2.5 months before. I parked my car when the rain got even stronger, left it and climbed up the volcanic rock from which the orange glow shone through the fog. I got closer and closer before I reached the back of the hill and saw the object hovering on the other side. across and below me, and just 20 or 30 feet away. I hid myself. I was afraid to get closer. Sat there and did not believe my eyes. I could see everything, each detail of the ship, which was hovering there in the mists of the wood. One of the things I consider most important were my feelings. I had a mixture of emotions. I was very happy and afraid at the same time, because I did not know what would happen. What happened was that I got to see the object very closely, and I was surprised, and I wondered because the object was very beautiful. I could see the whole dome. On the surface it had several cavities. They ranged from very small ones to ones with a diameter of 5 feet, and there were many of them. I was very happy to see all this. I could also see the red spots the ship had, and I could also see that the red areas were brighter than the yellow ones. I did not have my camera with me, so I tried to impress every tiny detail into my mind. It was all very surprising. So I went over the details of the ship for 2 or 3 times, still with a mixture of feelings from fear to happiness. When all of a sudden I felt someone touching my shoulder, and when I felt the touch, I fainted. I knew I got caught. They knew I was observing them, so I was fainting.
Que alguien me tomaba del hombro, y en el momento en que me sentí tocado por alguien, me desmayé, ¿sí? El haberme sentido descubierto, ¿sí?
When I recovered, I first saw, and then I could hear, and at last I could smell, and what I smelled was the odor of the woods. And then I remembered what had happened. Once I remembered what had happened, I was shocked, because my clothes were completely dry. This meant that something else must have happened in between. Completely bewildered, I looked around. I looked down again to see the UFO, but it was not there anymore. It was completely dark already. I climbed down the hill on which I was, and I got to the road and finally to my car. It was difficult for me to find it, since there was no path down from the slope. Eventually I got into my car and turned on the lights, when I realized that there was another car parked in front of me, about 30 feet away, a red Volkswagen Caribe. From there, a young man came out, walked towards me, and when I put my window down, the guy said, "Hello, how are you?" I replied, "Hello, I'm fine, thank you." And the man said, "If you want to know what you lived through this evening, I will wait for you tomorrow, where the circuit in Ayusco divides in 2. Be there at noon."
Si quieres saber qué fue lo que viviste el día de hoy, te espero en donde se divide el circuito del Ajusco en 2. Ahí te espero mañana a mediodía y te explicaré qué fue lo que viviste la tarde de hoy. Se me hizo eterna porque yo quería que ella fuera.
The night was eternal because I wanted it to be noon already. I had so many questions and I wanted to know. When it was close to midday, I took my car and I drove over to the place which he told me. And it was a surprise to see him there, surrounded by about 20 little children. He was talking to them, and I was wondering what he was talking about. In one hand he had a cricket, and in the other hand He had some grass, some vegetation from this place, and he was talking to the kids about the interaction of all living things on Earth, and how wonderful this interaction is to keep all life going on.
Esta interacción se seguirá llevando durante el tiempo que haya vida sobre este planeta.
After he noticed that I was there, he gave the kids 3 balls to play with, and he started to talk to me. And he said, "Look, Carlos, you will remember everything which happened yesterday, but it will take some time, because if you would remember everything all of a sudden, it would be a shock for you. But when you remember, you know where to find me."
Porque si lo recordaras todo de momento, sería verdaderamente un shock para ti. Me dijo, y en el momento en que tú hayas recordado todo, sabrás a dónde irme a buscar.
In the following years, Diaz, now living in the valley of Tepoztlan, south of Mexico City, was able to take several more spectacular pictures of these ships of light. But time wasn't right yet to tell the public, and so he kept them for himself, without telling anybody.
A partir de ese día,
but what he can tell you is that from this day on,
he contado con una maravillosa amistad con estos seres.
He has been having this great friendship with these beings.
Una amistad que para mí merece todo mi respeto.
A friendship that is based on respect.
Y todo mi cariño,
and all his love,
por lo que me han mostrado,
for what they have shown him,
de este nuestro maravilloso hogar,
of this our wonderful home,
nuestro planeta Tierra,
our planet Earth,
que como ellos me lo han dicho,
as they have told him,
es un verdadero oasis,
it's an oasis
en el espacio.
In space.
10 years later, the sun was darkened over Mexico. During the eclipse of July 11th, 1991, thousands of witnesses saw strange craft in the skies. And one man, the prominent TV anchorman Jaime Maussan, got involved into the quest of his life.
Well, there was a multiple sighting over Mexico. That day we had a total solar eclipse, an eclipse that occurs every 676 years. It's an eclipse of the series Saros, and it's very important in the history of Mexico. We didn't know that at that moment, but what people knew is that they were going to have a big show. They took their cameras out, and at least 15 people in Mexico City were able to record, besides the eclipse, a UFO hovering over Mexico City. These persons, Guillermo Arreguin, took the video to a newscast called 24 Hours that night, the July 11th night, and was presented as a strange object hovering over Mexico, but nothing else. Then with that video, I went to the second program of Nino Canun, and I asked the people, if you record the eclipse, please look carefully, because probably there is the same UFO in your tape. We received more than 50 videos. And in 15, we think there is the UFO, and we decided to check 6 of them, and we got exactly the same kind of object. It means that it is not the invention, it's not a hoax of one man, it's something that was in Mexico there. From that moment to now, I have been receiving videos from many people in Mexico, and so far we have collected more than 1,000, probably 1,500 videos. The Mayan Codex, the Códice 3D. In that codex, we found that there is a table of eclipse, and they knew that in July the 11th, 1991, that's more than 1,000 years later that was written, this codex, they knew that was going to be an eclipse on that same date. And there was a prophecy, a very strong prophecy over this eclipse. It said that it was going to be a big change in Mexico or the world. The new lords were going to come, and the old lords were going to be killed, or they have to leave, because the new order was coming back. They say also that would be the eclipse of going back to the roots, to the Indians, to the indigenous. It was named the soul of Quetzalcoatl. Also, it was named the sixth son. The Aztecs were the sons of the fifth son. We are the sons of the sixth son. And in the sixth son, besides the new order is going to come, we were going to meet with the lords of the stars. I went to the television to present the solar eclipse videos, and exactly how we checked them in the computer, how we tested them. And then Carlos came to me on October the 31st, 1991, and he said, Jaime, I didn't see you in television, but many people told me that you were testing material. Would you like to test these photographs? And then he showed me 4 of the best photographs I have ever seen in my life. And I said, where did you take this? And then he started to relate this story. And I said, yes, I want to check the material. I think it's a very interesting case. And we will do it, but very slowly. That's when we started. On December the 3rd, just a month later, he asked me for a video camera. And with that video camera, he was able to record at least 6 videos that we have, and they are extraordinary. Besides, he has been taking more and more pictures, and I think the evidences so far are that is one of the most amazing cases ever. We have...
A mí me despertó. Yo salí al jardín de la casa.
Again, I had this sensation in my solar plexus, as I always have it when they appear. I got up. It was 3:30 in the morning. I grabbed the video camera Mr. Musan has given to me. I went into the garden of my house when I saw the ship hovering over the city. In my first video, you see the ship over the north of Tepoztlan. I filmed it, and you can see how it hovers over the city, making these shaking movements. I filmed it without a tripod, tried to get reference points into the image when it suddenly disappeared. But I still had the feeling that this was not over yet, because I still had this sensation in my solar plexus. I went out on the terrace of my house, set my tripod, and waited. Suddenly it appeared again, this time much closer, in the direction of Santiago de Tepatlata. It was the second video I shot on the 3rd of December, 1991.
Ese video fue tomado el mismo día 3 de diciembre de 1991.
In the next video, I used my tripod again. Therefore, all visible movements are those of the object, not of my camera. I again had this sensation and went out on the terrace when the object appeared in the sky directly above me. I wanted to extend the legs of the tripod, but I did not manage to do that anymore. So suddenly it appeared, and as I lay on the ground, zooming in and out, and one time I knocked against the tripod. This time you see all details, the different fields of light, the changes of the intensity of the light, and the pulsating center of the object. I was able to zoom in so closely that the whole frame of vision of the camera was filled. So close was it. It was a misty day. The air was very humid. The light was shining through the nightly fog. Then Heme Musan asked me to fix the camera on the tripod and appear in the picture myself, so you could see that I don't have a model on a fishing rod or do any other manipulation. Also, he wanted me to let the camera run all the time until the morning, after dawn, when you can see all landscape details and reference points, so you can see it is indeed a large object. I put the camera into the open kitchen window of our house, because from there you have the best view over the football field, above which they appeared most of the times, and where I had my encounters and contacts with them. After I turned on the camera and made sure that it functions, I went out and took my flashlight with me, so you could recognize me in the darkness. When I still tried to make myself visible with the torch, it suddenly appeared over the football field. You can hear on the video how someone yells, "Guemero, Guemero, come quickly." And you can see how cars are passing on the slope of the hill on the highway from Mexico City to Caultra. After a few minutes, the object disappears again.
Es ahora. No estoy hablando aquí con la cámara. Voy a quitarlo. Pero traigo el tripié, ayúdame, May. Con el tripié no puedo.
Jaime Maussan commissioned the first scientific analysis of the Diaz material. The study was performed by Professor Victor Quesada, who teaches informatics at the Polytechnical Institute of the University of Mexico.
Until this moment, I did not find any elements which could discredit the case. In my opinion, it is real, it is authentic. I have divided my investigation into two parts: laboratory research and a field investigation. The laboratory part consisted of video analysis and photo analysis. The video was analyzed as dynamic video and static video, which means frame by frame. The tests included a study of the definition and the resolution, an analysis of the intensity of fields and colors, and changes in the spectrum of light from ultraviolet to infrared.
Se hizo perfilado de las figuras que se encontraban, conversiones a negativo, emulaciones a ultravioleta y a infrarrojo.
Some of the tests has been change of definition and resolution, change of the intensity of fields, like from infrared to ultraviolet, and also change of the definition and change of spectrums of the light.
Have been able to prove with that testing that his ship is made of plasma. Is the same kind of plasma that we have in the cells. That tells us that probably it's a living ship. You know, it's something different, something we cannot understand.
We have found two principal types of objects: the smaller ones, with a diameter of 36 to 45 feet, and the big ones, with a diameter of about 120 feet.
Quesada was so impressed by the material that in 1993 he decided to start a field investigation. Together with 10 professors of his university and 20 students, he set up several observation posts on the mountains around the valley of Tepoztlan. And indeed, the team saw and filmed strange luminous objects by themselves.
Sí, estoy grabando.
Tengo deslumbrado un ojo y no puedo grabar. Pues no sé por qué, pero yo creo que metió la luz de la cámara en el ojo.
La luz. ¿Cuánto tiempo lleva, Víctor?
Lleva como 2 horas.
Y ya subió.
2 horas y media.
Pero esta luz lleva ahí ya más de 2 horas. Y voy a abrir el zoom.
Todos pensamos, nos concentramos en la luz.
Margarita ya se subió.
Mis alumnos tuvieron una experiencia muy fuerte.
My students have had a very strong experience. One night, an object nearly landed, and many of them got really afraid, ran away, and had several accidents. It caused a panic in one of the camps. We had to seize the project. I think more evidence than this is impossible to obtain.
más pruebas, pues no se puede
So
perder.
more proof than this is impossible to ask for.
The first European who heard about the Carlos Diaz experience was the Italian stigmatist Giorgio Bongiovanni. Bongiovanni, who claimed he received the marks of Jesus during an apparition of the Holy Virgin in Fatima, Portugal, believes in the existence of beings of light, and for several times saw luminous objects in connection with his visions. Although they disagree about the interpretation of his experience, Diaz, himself a devout Catholic, allowed Bongiovanni to show his material in Europe. Through Bongiovanni, the German historian, cultural anthropologist, and UFO researcher Michael Hesseman learned about the case and decided to start an independent investigation. When he visited Tepoztlan the first time in June 1994, Hesseman was sure that if the case was real, he would find further witnesses who must have seen these large luminous objects over their city at the times when Diaz took his films and photographs. What he found was more than a picturesque Mexican country town. Tepoztlan is located in a sacred valley of the Aztecs, the great native Mexican culture. Its huge stone formations were considered monuments of an antediluvian culture of giants and vortexes of cosmic energy. The Aztec priests worshipped the rock of life, the rocks of the dwarves, the hill of a man, thought to be a portrait of the prehistoric demigod Tepoztecatl, the son of the divine Quetzalcoatl, Hercules-like with his mighty beard and club. Next to it, on a ridge, the Aztecs built their only pyramid located on top of a mountain. It was called the Teocalli, the House of Energy. Here, history says the emperor Motekutsoma came to meditate and find peace after his military campaigns. Next to the temple stands a disc-shaped rock, like a huge petrified spaceship. Many believe it was a symbol of those worshipped and met here by the priests and shamans of ancient times. We find to its right the Cerro de la Luz, the Rock of the Lights. From here, since men can remember, as the locals claim, strange lights emerged and crossed the sacred valley, sometimes flying on the directions of the mighty volcano Popocatépetl, which rises to the east. Their paths were marked by ancient temples, later replaced with churches by the Spaniards, and they often appear on one of the numerous feast days celebrated in Tepoztlan all over the year as a fixed point of a sacred calendar.
I think these lights are something very important because already our ancestors, our grandparents, told us about them. But in those days, they did not have much means to study them. It was considered normal to have them here, and I think they are here, as many people believe, people who know, because this is an energetic point on this earth, because of its geological composition. So they come to charge their batteries.
Y realmente pues nosotros lo hemos visto, así como nos lo platicaron nuestros abuelos, también nosotros lo hemos observado.
I know they come because Tepoztlan has an overcharge of energy. They come to charge themselves with this energy. That's a long story, going back very far. I studied it since many years. This goes back to the time of Christ.
I'm studying it from the times of Christ.
In the ex-convent of Tepoztlan, next to the main church of the town, Santa Maria Natividad, erected in 1530, we find murals and reliefs showing strange objects in disguise. On the frescoes on the ceiling of its cloister, these objects are painted in orange and red. Is it a strange coincidence that they resemble the craft photographed and filmed by Carlos Diaz? In its neighborhood lies Amatlan, the place where, according to an Aztec legend, Quetzalcoatl, the plant serpent, the mythical hero and founder of the Mexican culture, came down from the skies, lived and taught his people. All this makes Tepoztlan a magic place, an opening to the cosmos and maybe an entrance into another dimension. And it is right here where man, as the ancients believed, communicated with the gods, and today a man claims to have encountered beings of light, visitors from a distant world or maybe a parallel universe.
In what form do the contacts happen?
¿En qué forma suceden los contactos?
A mí hay una sensación muy especial que se me presenta a esta altura del plexo solar.
There is a sensation concentrated in the plexus, in the solar plex of his body.
Es una sensación como cuando uno está fuertemente enamorado.
It is a sensation very much alike when you are tremendously in love.
Y esta sensación me despierta.
And this sensation sometimes wakes him up at night.
Y sé que voy a tener un encuentro con ellos.
And he knows he's going to have an encounter with them.
Sí. Lo que me agrada de esta experiencia que he tenido,
what he likes about this experience he has had,
es que la comunicación que ha habido con ellos
is that the communication they have been having
es como la comunicación que estamos teniendo tú y yo en este momento.
Is just as we are now.
So it is a purely physical contact.
Es una
absolutely physical.
Puramente física.
Bueno,
los puedes tocar.
Los puedo tocar. Y en ocasiones ellos presentan un cuerpo de luz.
Sometimes as they are human-like, sometimes they have a body made of light. I have seen the UFO that Carlos has photographed and videotaped only once. And this was some years ago 5 years ago maybe, and he called me when he got home, and I went out and he showed me. So I saw the very same shape, and the color wasn't yellow and red, but it was completely orange. But it was the same one, and it was traveling at the south part of Tepoztlán.
The first step in Hesseman's investigation was to determine if independent eyewitnesses exist, if others saw what Diaz filmed so closely over their city. He just started to ask people on the streets and in fields. The result of his inquiry convinced the researcher that indeed something strange is going on. More than half of the Tepoztecos, the citizens of Tepoztlán, claim to have seen the very same orange-reddish shapes of light.
I saw these orange lights many times. They appear here and there. One time at 5 a.m., one time at 7 p.m. They are round, disc-shaped, and they have a flat dome on top. They have notches on their sides, like bitten out, and they are surrounded by light. Sometimes they are more yellowish, sometimes more reddish, sometimes they rotate.
It was about 7:30 p.m. My daughter comes home from school at that time. I went to the corner of the street to pick her up. Then I waited for her. It suddenly appeared in the sky. It was very, very big. In the middle of this round, big thing was something moving. It looked like it would change its colors. I showed it to my daughter, but she only said, "Don't look at it. Come on, let's go." But I wanted to see it. Its center pulsated. It was very large and round, very bright. It was yellow with orange light.
They look like the sun. They are round and have many little lights. They are yellow, orange and white, and they appear and disappear. The light objects sometimes suddenly appear, fly and disappear again. Most of the time they disappear in the direction of the Tepozteco hill. Most people here have seen them. You will find that out when you ask in the town. One night we saw this light in the mountains. We observed it through our binoculars. It was very bright, pulsated in red and orange, but was mostly red. It looked like it had landed on a hill. It was a round object. For several minutes it stayed there, then it suddenly disappeared.
We saw for several times these lights over the Cerro de la Luz. They were red and yellow and orange. They were round.
We were driving in a car when we saw this big object, as big as a bus or a truck. It was very large. It was shining in a very bright, intense light, red and yellow.
Con colores azul, rojo, naranja, pero lo más sorprendente es que no hacía ruido.
Una ocasión sí vi, venía yo de por acá del rumbo de Santo Domingo, hacia aquel lado pegado ya.
It was around 7:30 p.m. when I saw a strange luminous object standing on the Cerro de Hombre. It was an orange-colored object, round, very, very, very bright, and very, very, very big. It was brighter and bigger than an aircraft light. It came down slowly and eventually lighted up the whole area where it was landing. It was staying there for 15 minutes. I was together with another sister of our order. It came, stood there, and suddenly vanished. It was orange-colored, very bright, round, and big.
Y después mi compañera con la que iba también la vio, pero a mí la verdad me dio miedo. O sea que nada más era así redondo, pero cosa grande. Era algo grande.
It was hovering here above the trees, not too high. It was a large orange-colored disc, and suddenly it disappeared.
Una ocasión, con su esposa estaba yo platicando y
One time during my training here, I saw such an object over the Cerro de la Luz. It had exactly the shape and the colors as on the photo. It was round and consisted of yellow and red light. I saw these objects several times over the rocks and hills, one time in this direction, one time over there, another time over Zematzin, always at night, one time at 8 p.m., one time at 4 a.m. Yes, they are identical. They have these red and yellow lights, and whenever they appear suddenly, all the dogs start to howl and bark. I saw this red-orange light 2 times in this direction, the third time over the Zematzin, in direction of the village Santiago, a little bit to the left. This was 2 months ago. The sighting lasted for about 3 minutes. It was gliding, wobbling, went up and down. Another time was at 9 p.m. My wife was there. My mother was there. We saw how this luminous object moved down slowly and jerky before it suddenly disappeared. All of a sudden, in a break of a second, it just disappeared.
My wife was with me, my mother was with me.
Entre los tres estuvimos observando esa luz, pero se movía muy despacio hacia abajo.
Very slowly.
Sí, después
down,
desapareció.
And
de repente se fue en una fracción de segundos.
In a fraction of a second, it just
se apagó y ya no
went left.
Con un grupo de personas que viene aquí a hacer un programa de desintoxicación.
We were a group of people in a meditation class at a detoxification seminar when we suddenly saw this light in the mountains. It was very impressive because it was very large. It changed its colors, stood there for a while before it suddenly disappeared. We were all very impressed by what we saw. It looked like it were looking for a place to land. It had bright colors, and when it rose, they became more intense, and it grew and changed its colors. It was yellow and orange mixed, more or less like on the photos of Carlos. All of a sudden, it disappeared.
Son fotos, yo creo que son tomas, pues creíbles, ¿no? Creíbles porque las toman, yo creo que en el momento.
Although I am a doubting Thomas, this is credible. Many people have seen these objects at different opportunities in different parts of Tepotztlan. They appear within a second. hover in the sky and disappear again. They look like on the photos and films, and this proves they are real. I had several sightings by my own over the hills. For example, over the Zematzin, the Hill of Life. The colors of this luminous object were very impressive. It was red and yellow. Also some violet was in it. It was very impressive. It was quite a big apparatus, an enormous object of light.
Se ve la gran dimensión, yo creo que el aparato que traen, porque sí se ve enorme las luces, ¿no?
Brillante. En el mero cerro del Tepasteco. No es el Tepasteco. Mira, están saliendo varias. Están mediando. Aquí está. Ya se apagó.
Un carro, ¿no?
No. No, mire, están prendiendo, son 1, 2, 3, 4. Me acerco otra vez con zoom. Ahí está, bueno, fuertísima. Es una bola y ahí está la luz, Es del mismo lugar la luz. Yo veo una bola impresionante con esto, ¿eh? No, es una lucecita. No, pero aquí se ve una bola, estoy grabando. Ahí está arriba.
Otras dos, pero grueso.
Ahí hay varias. Sí. Me voy a salir un poco de zoom porque son demasiadas luces.
Sí, ahora sí hay demasiadas luces.
The largest airport of Central America is Mexico City's Benito Juarez International Airport. Its air traffic controllers receive radar data from a whole network of stations covering all of the highlands of Mexico, including the Sacred Valley. Hesseman decided to inquire there. And indeed, the air traffic controllers confirmed that their radar regularly detects unidentified targets over the area of Tepoztlan and its neighboring city, Cuernavaca.
We have information about these objects in this area sometimes, very close to the volcanoes also, in Atlisco and Cuernavaca. Cuernavaca is located here, approximately at 35 or 40 miles south of Mexico VOR, Mexico Airport, and sometimes we have activity there at this point.
But it's near Tepoztlan.
Yes, it's very close to Tepoztlan. We have more activity in this place than in other of the Mexico around this one.
Oh.
There.
Yeah, I have it.
This is what we see. See? We can put it in green. There it goes. Disappears. Comes and goes. That's what we saw. And that's the only. We don't have an explanation for that. Because of the speed that they appears to display.
What kind of flag? Here's another one, right?
All right.
The white one.
Yeah. Yep. That's another one.
What kind of flight characteristics they seem to have?
See, like this, with these 2 minus vectors. This aircraft or whatever it is gonna in 2 minutes he could fly that right to here. So we're talking about. Oh shoot! See, he was displaying like this. He was talking about 13 or 14 miles in 2 minutes.
but Hesseman only believed it when he saw one by himself in February 1996.
I was driving from Tepoztlan back to Mexico City in a taxi when at Viajusco area I saw an orange light hovering over the city. I immediately told my driver to stop. I went out, I got my camera, and I managed to film it for several seconds before it suddenly disappeared. I was very shocked and very amazed by it. My driver saw it too. And I wondered if it might have been an ovni, a UFO. It didn't look like anything conventional to me.
Sí, sí.
Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Last Thursday night?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some around Cusco, I would say. Yeah, definitely there were. And even we had a report of an airplane that he asked us, he was flying this way. He was coming from Mexico. He took off from Mexico. He was going to Guadalajara. So he went like this, going like this. And in this area, around this area, he saw a very bright light that he was asking if that was another aircraft coming toward him. We didn't have any other report that an airplane was coming. So we couldn't explain what it was. We started seeing some echoes, but we didn't see one exactly in front of him. He and another airplane who was coming also behind him, going also to Toluca, saw the same light, and that's the area they saw it, around the Cusco area.
Hesseman was not the only researcher who came to Tepoztlan to look into the case and witness the objects by himself.
When I went to Tepoztlan, well, it was with Guido Ferrari of the Italian-Swiss television, because Ferrari had to produce a video documentary on UFOs, and we had chosen also an interview with Carlos Diaz for our trip in Mexico. So we went to Tepoztlan and we had a date with Carlos in his Tepoztlan house. And we arrived on the spot at night, and so we left the car and began walking towards the house of Carlos. And at that point, I noticed on the roof of the house, well, on the roof, it was just on the roof in the sense that the perspective showed it on the roof, I noticed a dot of light. It was something a little bigger than a normal star. And so I noticed it. I saw that this object was moving in an irregular way. And so I said, Guido, what's that? And Ferrari watched it and said, oh my God, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Yes, it is. And so at the same time we cried, the cameras! And we ran to the car in order to open it and to put outside cameras, video cameras and so on. But it was too late, because in half a minute or something more, this dot of light switched off, simply. It disappeared.
It was in December 1995. I was visiting Carlos Diaz together with Roberto Pinotti and Daniel Munoz. It was evening, about 8 p.m. There were many stars in the sky, and suddenly a bigger star started to move, which of course was strange, so we observed it for several seconds with an open mouth. The star was coming down like a falling leaf, going left and right and left and right, like a pendulum, but not symmetrical, and then it suddenly disappeared.
I had opportunity to saw the plasma ship in Tepoztlan in 2 different occasions. This was 1.5 years ago, but 1 month ago we have another sighting over Tepoztlan. We was working with a TV crew from the United States when we saw a very bright light over the hill of light, maybe 20 seconds. Was a very bright, very yellow, reddish yellow in color, just appear over the hill of light, hovering the top of the hill with a very slow movement, and later just disappear. Was very few time, just 20 seconds, but was very, very clear. It's exactly the same ship that we saw in the Carlos photographs and videos. The movement of the UFO over the hill of light was very slowly, like a pendular movement, maybe 20 seconds, and just disappear. Don't stop the movement, just disappear.
Also, Shirley MacLaine, the world-famous Hollywood actress, heard of the case and decided to go to Tepoztlan to meet Carlos Diaz in person. With her was her friend, a high-level Australian politician and UFO investigator, Alex Gionetti, a friend of hers who served as a translator.
In direction to Tepoztlan, we was heading in the freeway. The freeway connects Cocoyoc with Tepoztlan, and suddenly we saw high in the sky this kind of oval orange object. It was very steady, but very radiant, very shiny, orange, very orange, and it's a light I never saw in my life. The 4 in the van was very astonished, and suddenly the object started to shrink, started to contract. And when it was contracting, it was turning to white and create a kind of a white ball of light. And suddenly disappear as the old TV, as the old cathodic tubes television sets. And we was very kind of shocked.
Hesseman's next step was a psychological evaluation of the main witness and his family dynamics. For this, in February 1997, he invited one of the most respected psychiatrists of the world to Tepoztlan, Professor John E. Mack of the Harvard University, who received the Pulitzer Prize for his biography of Thomas Edward Lawrence and stunned the academic world with his open-minded approach to the alien abduction phenomenon.
Experience from the beginning. Perfecto. La sensación a esta altura del plexo solar.
I have a sensation in my solar plex.
De amor.
Yes. I have this feeling of love in my solar plex.
Me despierta.
It wakes me up in the middle or whatever. And he had to cross some other lands to get to his. So he said, all of a sudden, daylight. Like daylight, and he said something, ¿verdad? Que dijo que se le apareció una luz en el cielo, así arriba de su casa con Toño.
Sí, dijo, me amaneció.
Where did you see? Which time was like the most, beautiful, or the most, wow, ooh, that's a special one, like the most special time?
¿Cuál vez ha sido, de todas las veces que has visto ovnis, cuál es la que más te ha impresionado, la que más te haya causado así una sensación de wow?
Así de repente se volteó, abajo era plateado y arriba dorado.
It was going that way, and he said in the upper part was golden, and in the bottom was silvery.
Uh-huh. And what did you think when you saw that?
¿Y qué pensaste cuando viste?
Where do you think it came from?
¿De dónde crees que viene?
No sé.
You don't know. Some space, huh?
Y más emocionante.
Todos han sido emocionantes.
They've all been exciting.
They've all been exciting.
Pero uno que más te haya impresionado.
Cuando vino el Grupo Sol.
When we visited the Grupo Sol in their camp up there in the mountains,
Esa vez,
suddenly a bright, very intense light appeared. One of the researchers saw it, a bright orange-colored light. It was moving up and down very fast, like the light of an EKG. After a short while, another, even more intense light appeared over the mountain. It was orange-colored, and it slowly came down.
También casi al mismo tiempo apareció una luz del cerro, de una pared del cerro, una luz muy intensa que se fue encendiendo. Después esa luz subió así y ahí se estuvo así mientras que pasaban el otro disco anaranjado por esta parte y los otros por allá. Se hizo más chiquita, pero después encendió y se fue bajando lentamente hasta que llegó al mismo lugar de donde salió y ahí se quedó, pero muy pequeño. Y ahí siguió un rato y después ya se apagó.
Very important for, as witnesses, for the quality and truthfulness and sincerity and genuineness of their father as a human being. And that is very powerful testimony. In other words, you're with those boys, and you cannot believe, and you see their relationship to their father, and you cannot believe that they are children of a man who is a dissimulator.
When Dr. Meg showed him a photo taken by Diaz, his neighbor remembered seeing the same object several years ago at El Xingu, the very same place where Carlos took the photo.
I saw this luminous object. It was enormous. It was about 11 at night. I was with a friend. It was about 12 years ago. It was overwhelming. 10 times bigger than the moon. It came towards us, then it turned, and it left towards the next village. It was enormous. The same shape, the same colors, very big, enormous. I saw one up there near our house. It was a disc, round, the colors of the sun, orange, yellow, bigger than the moon, also with some red in it.
Muchas veces. También he visto esos platillos voladores.
He said he's seen flying saucers. ¿Cómo se parecen?
Los platillos voladores que descansan en el cerro.
They rest up on the mountains.
En lo feo.
¿En qué?
En lo más feo.
En lo más feo. In the worst parts of the mountain.
Sí, como este sí.
¿Sí?
Sí, acá.
He says yes, he's seen, that's what he's seen.
Sí, la luz que se ve
sí.
Es como este color.
Yeah. The light that you can see is it's this color.
Aquel cerro allá en la punta se para uno, una luz.
Up there in the mountain,
clara, blanca.
White light stops up there on the mountain. And then over there on that other
se para una de color.
That has three colors. A light came down. ¿Era de noche?
Sí.
A light came down into the mountain from the sky. About 11:30 at night.
Al descender, se ve claramente como que levantó una polvadera muy grande.
Una polvadera. And as it came down onto the mountain, it looked like it raised a lot of dust.
Posteriormente, vio claramente una rampa de luces.
It had like a bunch of lights. ¿Qué colores?
De diferentes colores.
That a bunch of different colors.
No exactamente así con el color.
He said the same shape and more or less the same colors.
For several days, Professor Meg carefully interviewed Carlos Diaz, his wife Margarita, his two sons, Carlito and Alejandro, and dozens of citizens of Tepoztlan before he came to an assessment of the case.
Having spent, really 2.5 days with him and his family, I think he's a credible witness. He calls himself a witness, and he doesn't like to be called a contactee or abductee. He's a witness, and he's a credible witness. I haven't found anything about him that would lead one to believe that he would make up a story or doctor photographs or tapes. He appears to be about what he says he is, a kind of visionary experiencer.
What impressed you most during the 3 days? What convinced you most of the authenticity of the case?
Well, mainly spending time with him and his family and getting to know him and Margarita and the boys, and just feeling that this is a man not capable of the kind of dissimulation of which he's been accused. By dissimulation, I mean faking photographs, faking videos. I'm not technically competent to assess those aspects of the work, but he doesn't seem to me someone that would be inclined to do that or motivated to do that. He's not someone who's very good at looking after his own financial interests, for instance. He's still quite poor. They're finishing up a room in their home. He has, with all the unusual material he has, he's profited little from it. If anything, he's been overly generous with his own creative material, in the belief, rather naive belief, that if he just shares his truth, that it will be taken in a wholesome way. It seems like a caring, sincere family man, and not somebody given to lying, distorting, fraudulent behavior, this kind of thing. It seems almost unthinkable, having gotten to know him as well as we have in these days, that he would be capable of that.
This is exactly the impression his neighbors had of Carlos Diaz. As the former Presidente Municipal, the mayor of Tepoztlan confirmed to us.
Bueno, que nosotros, ¿verdad? Sí tenemos, ¿verdad? Conocimientos de que la versión.
I think we all here believe in the story of Carlos Diaz. He's a good man. His work is very serious, and I think he's doing his job very well. What he photographed was seen by us many times.
Did you ever hear anybody reporting about Carlos carrying models, lamps, any indication that he might fake the material?
No, I don't believe that. There's no way this could be possible, since nobody ever reported anything, and we ourselves have seen the very same object in different times and occasions, so we know that this kind of machine really exists.
Did you ever see me? I was looking at Carlos with his camera to...
I saw Carlos and his camera when he videotaped one light in the sky. It is good that he is working with his camera, that he films these objects in the sky.
It's good that Carlos is working with the video machine to videotape these objects. In this last 4 years that Carlos has been having his contacts and taking pictures and videos, I have never seen anything that would make me think that he is faking anything.
from a human point of view, really Carlos seems a honest person with a normal life, a normal family, and normal problems. And and as Guido Ferrari said, if he is an Oxer, we don't understand anything as far as psychology of witnesses is concerned.
What convinced you most that the Carlos Diaz case is real?
Himself. He's a so simple man. He's a very nice, honest. He's very honest. He's a very good friend. He's a very good father, very loving, very caring for his family. He's very humble. He doesn't have a penny. To create a hoax on this kind of case, he would need, besides the complicity of many people, he would need a lot of money. He doesn't have money for tomorrow, and besides, he's not interested in money. What he's interested in is giving his message out, telling people that the Earth or planet is dying.
What form do the contacts happen?
¿En qué forma suceden los contactos?
A mí hay una sensación muy especial que se me presenta a esta altura del plexo solar.
There is a sensation concentrated in the plexus, in the solar plex of his body.
Es una sensación como cuando uno está fuertemente enamorado.
It is a sensation very much like when you are tremendously in love.
Y esta sensación me despierta.
And this sensation sometimes wakes him up at night.
Y sé que voy a tener un encuentro con ellos.
And he knows he's going to have an encounter with them.
Sí. Lo que me agrada de esta experiencia que he tenido
what he likes about this experience he has had,
es que la comunicación que ha habido con ellos
is that the communication they have been having
es como la comunicación que estamos teniendo tú y yo en este momento.
is just as we are now.
So it is a purely physical contact.
Es una
Absolutely physical.
Puramente física.
You
Bueno,
can touch them.
los puedes tocar.
Los puedo tocar y en ocasiones ellos presentan un cuerpo de luz.
Sometimes, as they are human-like, sometimes they have a body made of light.
Sometimes these ships appear in great altitude, coming down slowly to hover eventually over the ground in an altitude of 1.5 feet.
Lo que ocurre es que conforme más alto, más arriba,
when it is still in great altitude, the movements of the ship are very unstable. But when it hovers over the ground, it is completely static. But it also happens that the ship suddenly appears right on this spot. For me, it's like a kind of magic. They come directly out of the light, slowly, part for part. Their body emerges out of this wall of light.
Carlos has been having contacts for the last 18 years, but maybe only in 2 of them I had the consciousness that he was going to have a contact. So I was helping him to get dressed and to be warm so he wouldn't get sick. But in the other times, I didn't have no consciousness. It was like they put some spell on me so I wouldn't wake up, because I'm a mother and mothers always wake up with any small noise. but not anymore. I never notice when he goes to a contact. Twice in this last 18 years, I was aware that Carlos was not in bed. I woke up and he wasn't there. At the beginning, I just said, well, he might have gone to have a contact. So I was okay. I was feeling fine.
Didn't you have the temptation to go out?
I had never had the temptation to spy on him. Never.
Why?
I don't know. I am very curious, and I really would like to know more about his contacts, but I never felt the need to spy on him.
How did Carlos Diaz get involved into the subjects of UFOs? Why did he become a contactee? We wanted to learn more about his background and visited his parents and family.
Yo recuerdo que sería alrededor de cuando tenía yo 7 años, cuando yo era niño.
I was very little, around 7. It was at Christmas or the New Year, I'm not sure anymore. And we were coming back home from my grandmother's house. My father was carrying me and was protecting me with a blanket. I woke up in the arms of my father and looked at the sky and saw a round thing with a ring around it, going from south to north over the city, Mexico City.
Un objeto circular rodeado por un anillo.
Eso sí, eso siempre.
What kind of child was Carlos Diaz? Was he special in any way?
¿Era especial de alguna manera especial?
Sí. Sí.
In what way?
Era muy como de investigation. Le gustaba la investigación.
He always liked investigation.
Was he interested in outer space, in UFOs?
Estaba interesado en cosas del espacio.
Desde pequeño.
Desde chiquito. Le pedía a los Santos Reyes un casco de astronauta.
He would ask for Christmas an astronaut hat.
Sí, le pedía a los Santos Reyes. Y robots y todo.
He would ask for robots.
Y veía puras películas de...
And he was always looking TV shows from space.
Pues porque es una coincidencia que cuando él viene es cuando vemos a los ovnis.
Because how come it mustn't be a coincidence that when he comes we can see the UFOs.
Como que lo andan buscando.
It's like they're looking for Carlos.
I think he had contact since he was little without knowing it, and that's why he was so attracted by space.
Incidente ocurrió en el año de 1979. En aquella época vivía en la casa de mis padres y
it happened in 1979, very early morning, around 6:20 or 6:30 a.m. I woke up by a strange feeling in my solar plexus. I saw a light reflecting on the wall, and it entered from a small triangular opening the curtain left from the window. I got very curious, and so I got up and looked out of the window to see what was going on. When I opened the curtain very slowly, I saw up in the sky a yellow object, very much in the shape of an egg, which was suspended there. I shared the bedroom with my brother, so I called him immediately and said, "Antonio, Antonio, come and see. There's a UFO." He put his blanket above his head and said, "What? A UFO? I don't want to see a UFO. I want to sleep." So I kept on looking at the object for some moment, and then the object left with a very high speed. The next day I set the alarm clock for the same hour I saw the object that day, and I was waiting that it returns. And indeed I saw the object again, and after a few seconds the object flew away again. So on the fourth day, I had my camera ready on a tripod with a cord trigger. The object came from east to west over the city, and I was able to take a picture. I opened the shutter for 4 seconds. I was afraid it would fly away, and I captured it on film. I was very glad I did that, to have an evidence in my hands for my brother.
Creo que a las 4 de la mañana.
No, eran 6:30 de la mañana.
6:30, no lo vimos. Nomás estaba emocionado.
We didn't see him at the real moment because it was very early in the morning, but after that he was very excited.
Sorprendido.
And surprised.
The one who was mostly shocked was Carlos' brother, who did not believe in these objects. He was awakened by Carlos, but didn't want to get up, because he didn't believe. So when he saw the picture, he was very surprised.
No se quería levantar a verlo, y él sorprendido le decía, mira, mira, ven. No, yo tengo sueño.
The films and photos of the so-called ships of light taken by Carlos Diaz are considered by many UFO researchers the best in the world. Others rejected them as being too good to be true. The Mexican optical physicist and computer expert, Professor Quesada, is convinced that they're real. But this was just one single opinion. To verify the results of his analysis, we consulted leading experts in the US, Italy, and Germany. The Village Lab in Tempe, Arizona is specialized in image processing and computer-animated special effects for music videos and Hollywood blockbusters. Its director, Jim Dilatoso, analyzes UFO photos for 20 years and exposed several spectacular hoaxes. Still, the Carlos Diaz pictures impressed him.
So concerning the Carlos Diaz picture, here's another thing to point out of note. If this is a small object with a beam splitter and it was close to the camera, we would find that the edges of the object out here would reveal themselves to be sharp like this, not distorted like this. No one test is conclusive. You have to take everything together, like going to the doctor, who has blood tests and x-rays and a variety of tests that you put everything together and draw a conclusion. The fact that we have a distortion out here and sharp edges here is one factor that indicates that this is probably not a small model in a beam splitter or superimposed. This has all the properties of coherent light, not diffuse light, not incandescent light, but coherent light, like a laser. The properties of the direct illumination and the properties of the reflected light are identical, as if the reflected surface did not absorb or diffuse any of the light. That's really strange. That's really strange. It's like the light is coming and bouncing off of that surface as if it's an absolutely precision polished mirror. No absorption or changing in the light characteristics at all. In fact, the brightness is almost identical. These colors are not distorting and blending together. It'd be like having a red laser and a yellow laser right beside each other, and they are not blending, making a new color. In fact, they're casting the image of this tree into the reflection here. And it is enlarging it as if this is a light source, casting a projected image of the trees like a hologram onto the surface here. If Carlos Diaz is doing this as a hoax, he's figured out some very clever methods. It's easy for someone testing pictures to go, oh, it's a fake, and he did it like this and like that. People that say it's a fake, they need to go do this. They need to figure out a way to do this and duplicate this picture. I can't figure out how it would be done with ordinary or even extraordinary tools and supplies that are around. We can use computers and test this thing forever, but there's some real basic things in optics and the characteristics of light that we don't need a computer to analyze those aspects of this. Try it yourself and see what you get. It's very unusual. I'm more interested in this picture than in most any other UFO pictures that I have seen, and it can't be easily dismissed. My conclusion at this moment is that this is an authentic picture of a very unusual phenomena, an unusual object. I don't think it's been faked.
How big do you think it might be?
I think this is a large object, larger than a bus or a tractor-trailer truck, 40, 50, 60 feet, because of its unusual luminance, light characteristics.
Robert Nathan is considered the father of image processing. He conceived it in the 60s and developed it ever since. He made NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab to the first in the field, the processor for all photos sent to Earth by NASA's both manned and unmanned space missions. Being a skeptic regarding the existence of UFOs, Dr. Nathan was the first address for us to consult.
I've been presented this image a year or so ago, and I didn't give it any particular amount of time. My concern then, as now, is that it should be easy enough to establish from the reflection off of the hood of the car the reflection of the object and also of the guardrail, that one should be able to establish the precise distance of the object. If the object is claimed to be many meters away, it looks immediately obvious that the parallax information, the change in the position of the object as seen off of the hood as compared to seen directly from the direct line of sight from the camera, is inconsistent with an object that has any distance. It looks as if there is some kind of model that was placed quite close to the railing of the car, and some careful measurement will either bear that out or not. But that's a worthwhile measurement to make by somebody who wants to take the effort.
Following Dr. Nathan's recommendations, we asked Diaz to take us to the site where he shot his pictures to verify the landscape details and measure the distances.
El objeto se encontraba.
The object emerged beyond these trees. It was rising from the gorge and moved up little by little.
Del valle y fue ascendiendo poco a poco.
We supplied first-generation copies of the original slides and the acquired data to 3 international experts in Italy, the US, and Germany who were willing to analyze the Diaz photographs and make the calculations recommended by Professor Nathan.
Le fotografie di Carlos Diaz sono estremamente interessanti.
The photos of Carlos Diaz are highly interesting. I tested 3 of them very carefully. They show a luminous object, red and yellow in color, ascending behind clearly visible reference points, behind a guardrail, bushes and trees, in front of a hill or mountain, in a landscape which it partially illuminates with its orange light. This object is absolutely real. It is not a montage. It is not projected into this scene. To find out if it is a small object close to the camera or a large object in some distance, there is a technique, the method of photodensitometry. We analyze the intensity of several areas of this luminous object and compare it with reference points in the image, for example, with landscape elements. Based on this, we can state with certainty that the luminous object is located within the second level of the image, beyond the trees. In the foreground, you see the hub of the car and the guardrail, then the trees and bushes, and behind them, in some distance, we have the luminous object. Based on this distance, and in relation to the other objects in this image, we calculate a minimum distance of 33 feet. Most probably much more. Therefore, the object photographed by Diaz must have had a diameter of at least 60 to 90 feet. I can only say that none of us, Rolf Dieter, Klein and myself, after analyzing the picture, found any indication of any known method to fake such a picture. We detected no strings, not even when we lighted up the background. No structures of any kind indicating a montage or any kind of manipulation. The object moved within the 15th second of the exposure upwards in a certain degree, not smoothly, but rather in a jerky way. Our analysis has shown that it was not a simple, solid, metallic object, but the complete series shows the phenomena of a luminous plasma field, which was never before documented so clearly. It seems to be an object consisting of pure light, concentrated in a way that it forms a structured craft. The size must have been, according to Rolf Dieter Klein and my own analysis, about 150 feet. It must have been a very large object. My conclusion? All available data indicate the authenticity of the picture with a certainty of 99%. The hypothesis that it might have been a forgery collapsed.
I looked at the picture both visually and on my computer quite extensively, and I cannot find anything in the picture that would make me think that it's a faked picture or a small model being photographed or a double exposure or any of the normal ways that pictures like this would be created if it was a artificial creation. My gut feeling is that the picture is probably the real thing. When a small object is photographed and then combined with a picture of trees and bushes, there's always a fringing effect around the edge of the tree branches and so forth that isn't the same as if you're photographing a real object. And I didn't detect any of that fringing that would make me think this was a composite picture. The trees don't look like miniature trees. I think they're real trees behind a real road guardrail. So I think the object itself is the size that it was stated to be and the size it appears to be. I would think the object would be something on the order of roughly 20 meters diameter, something on that size order.
Back in Arizona, we showed Diletoso the first films taken by Carlos Diaz in 1991.
This is a still picture. And I've looked at the video also. Like the still pictures, upon first viewing of the video, it looks very suspicious. It looks like an object suspended on a pendulum and moving. But upon more careful examination, the object is moving slowly. Momentum and mass movement around a pendulum would have it moving in a more regular motion. My theory is, having seen other photographs and video of UFOs flying and moving, is that they tether themselves somehow in our atmosphere relative to the surface of the planet and the magnetic fields of the Earth. Much like a boat with an anchor, that boat would be moving around the center point of an anchor. They look like they're moving around a pendulum because they are. But not because it's fake, but because it's real.
We found the same wobbling movement of the craft filmed by Carlos Diaz in several other authentic UFO films, including those taken by astronauts of the Space Shuttle in 1991 in the Earth orbit.
Toman los cinturones naturales de energía del planeta.
Because they take the energy belts of the planet.
Y por momentos entran a ellos.
And sometimes they travel in those belts, but sometimes they jump out of the belts.
Y se dejan ir por la energía.
And when they're in the belts, they let themselves go, flowing with the energy.
Y si quieren ellos mantenerse en ese lugar,
and if they want to maintain themselves in one certain place,
están actuando un poco en contra del cinturón de energía, del fluir natural de la energía.
Flow of the energy of the belt.
Entonces por eso se ve
so this is why
los
you
brincos
see
que hacen.
How they jump.
Pero en el momento en que se dejan ir con la corriente.
But once they go and flow with the energy,
entonces se van a una velocidad impresionante.
Then they travel at a very, very high speed.
But when we brought in the new films Diaz took in 1995, Diletoso was rather skeptic.
Tested the pictures in the early 90s and looked at still pictures in analyzing the edges, as I've done in blocking out the squares on this image. The properties indicated to me, because of the depth of field, that it was probably a large object. Now, it's years later, and I'm looking at video, motion video. Couple of things that I'm suspicious of are the ways that it moves. Now, optically, the edges make sense that is probably a large object. Probably a large object.
At different opportunities during my encounters, I experienced how a beam of light shot out of the craft. This beam of light has the purpose to bring insects, plants, pollen, small and bigger animals aboard the ship, and sometimes we too, my friend and I, were brought aboard by such a ray. This beam directly forms and emerges from the ship and consists of the same light or energy as the ship itself.
Doesn't exactly look like a large object when it's zoomed on by the properties of the edges. There are some confusing and disorienting things about it. The ray of light that comes down, when we look at it frame by frame, the light on the ray comes on and goes off in the same way. It's darker at the top than it is at the bottom. In the first frame of the 7 frames that the light is on, 14 fields. And it goes off the same way, with the top being darker than the bottom. See, this is the top, and this is darker, the luminosity is darker than the bottom. And it comes on that way, and it goes off that way. I found in each incident where the light comes on that at this spot, this one, this one, this one, we have a little mark, a little pock mark that looks like, if it's a fluorescent painted stick, maybe it's a little bubble that was on the paint. When the object moves, it tends to wobble, like maybe it's connected to this ray as the stick. If this were an extraterrestrial spacecraft, it might not be unusual that light can move top to bottom or bottom to top at a speed slower than the speed of light, because the variance is between one frame, 1/30th of a second. Well, if it was at the speed of light, we wouldn't even see it in a frame. It'd be off and then on. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
It'd be absolute black in one frame, and 1/30th of a second later, the whole frame would be on. Now, the coincidence that we might catch a frame in motion could exist, but for the fact that every single time that the ray comes on, it comes on and goes off identically the same way, with it being the darkest at the top and the brightest at the bottom. Which is curious. So, I'm still trying to understand it.
What the expert didn't know is that we already located an eyewitness for the very phenomenon Diaz has filmed. A Tepoztlan taxi driver on a night shift saw exactly the same orange disc when it was shooting rays down to the ground.
Forma es ovalada y los colores son unos colores claros entre amarillentos.
It was oval-shaped. Its colors were bright, yellow, orange and red, and it was sending a ray down, a flashing ray, several times. It was static, it hovered, but it made slight movements in a vertical direction. Then it suddenly disappeared.
Anyway, we were still skeptical about the new footage, but since one of the films contained clear foreground data, it was easy to find out if it was filmed in the real nature or on a tabletop with the use of a miniature tree. We therefore asked Diaz to take us to the site where he took his film.
In this night, I came here at about 3 a.m. when the ship first hovered right here on this side, before it flew over the tree to come down on the other side. I set up my tripod, fixed the camera on top of it, and began to shoot, when the object started to move up and down behind the tree. In order to get the best possible close-up, I zoomed in several times. This is how I shot the footage I gave you the other day.
No film which just shows a luminous object at night can ever be conclusive, unless it shows verifiable foreground data. But in this film, we have foreground data. The object is partially covered by the branches of a tree. Is it a large tree? We asked Carlos Diaz to take us to the site where he claimed he shot the film. We measured the diameter of the tree, the distance from the camera, we compared the zoom range of the camera, and we shot a lot of comparative footage from the same perspective. In our studio, using false colors to enhance the image, we were able to uncover details on the film not visible when you just view it. You have the same shape of the tree, the same right angle between the trunk and the branches, the same extended branches on the right side, and a second round tree or bush right in front of it. Although we were there years later, this is enough correlation to say it was the same tree in the same perspective. Any possibility of a montage or blue box effect? No. There's a direct interaction between the object and the tree. The tree vibrates, obviously touched by the energy field of the craft. And the glow of the craft slightly illuminates both the tree and the bush. This footage is real. It shows a large craft, and it is one of the best UFO films ever taken.
Caso para toda la investigación.
Soweit es geht. Stop.
After a careful measurement, we found the tree to be 35 feet wide, with a distance of 345 feet from the camera. Therefore, the craft was at least 60 feet in diameter. But are the Carlos Diaz UFOs unique, never before seen anywhere on Earth? No, they aren't. In 1965, Deputy Sheriff Arthur Strouch of St. George, Minnesota, photographed this disc-shaped orange-colored craft in the midst of a wave of sightings. On May the 4th, 1994, a cameraman of the local station TV Roma filmed this craft near Ostia, the ancient harbor of Rome. It was seen by hundreds of witnesses. In the enlargement, the same details are visible as on the Diaz films. Furthermore, little bolts of light are obviously dropped from the main craft, the same type of luminous spheres as they are regularly seen over Tepoztlán.
El mismo tipo de energía de la cual están formadas las naves más grandes, pero en estas pueden estar.
These spheres of light are made from the same kind of energy the big ship is made of, light energy. Some are unmanned, some have 1 or 2 people aboard. Some of these spheres are white, others blue, others red in color, and they are probes or monitors to study the environment. They explore the different life forms and conditions on Earth, many things. They don't interpret, they just study and collect the data and emotions involved. Since they are energy, nothing can stop them. They can go through anything. They even come out of the rocks.
Ahora sí, siendo energía, no hay nada que los pueda detener.
Another film was taken on August 23rd, 1994, by Daryl Spence in Mansfield, England. Again, it shows an orange-reddish disc which suddenly lights up, just as in one of the Diaz films. What causes this strange luminosity? We still don't know, but one who might have had an answer was the late Colonel Philip Corso, a member of the National Security Council under President Eisenhower and head of the U.S. Army Foreign Technology Desk. When Colonel Corso saw the Diaz photos, he knew they're real. And he claimed he saw the same type of technology when he coordinated the study of the Roosevelt wreckage by the U.S. Army Research and Development.
What you are seeing here, I told Diaz, is a flying saucer with its energy, propulsion energy on and going someplace. Either it's going or coming or accelerating. I don't know, because all you have here is a flat surface. So this thing is moving when it's like this, because the energy is on. And he was very pleased to hear this, because I told him the mistake that we have made. We built the type of flying saucers, but they would never fly most of the time, because they made the mistake of not realizing that the extraterrestrial is part of the flying saucer and part of the system himself. His energy guides the system. I told him that this, from our studies and our intelligence we had, these colors are part of the guidance propulsion system.
So you are absolutely convinced the pictures are real?
They're real. They had to be real, because he took the pictures and he had them. He never knew what this, well, he couldn't know an explanation like this. The explanation had to come from something like I was in, research and development, knowing about what they were, knowing what the guidance system was, knowing the type of propulsion systems, and knowing what was in space. Otherwise, a nice fellow like Diaz would have never known this. He had to be saved maybe on the level that I was on. So when I told him this, he was really pleased and happy. And I told the boy, well, you did an honest job, you were an honest man, but more likely you have been attacked by debunkers saying, oh, you don't know what you're doing. But you had something real here and never knew it. But it had to come from somebody that knew. So immediately when I saw it, I told Diaz what it was and explained it to him.
The renowned physicist Professor Dr. August Mason worked for the Belgian Royal Air Force and taught at the Catholic University of Louvain. After he learned about the Diaz pictures and studied them, he was as stunned as Colonel Corso.
As far as I see, there are no objections against it, and because if it is true, it is very interesting for me as a confrontation with a theory where one expected results of this type. I saw the pictures, and there is something probably very different from what others did, because I developed a theory for the propulsion of classical objects. Classical objects are actually symmetric objects. And it involves a system of how do they produce electromagnetic waves which surround the object. And this is a very interesting subject, and I'm happy to see that one of the predictions of the theory, which is that you should be able to create, or they should be able to create, standing waves with certain modes where at certain regularly distributed places you have a higher intensity, thus you could eventually ionize differently. So you, if this theory is correct, you could expect that somewhere an observation like this will appear.
For Professor James Hertog, the Carlos Diaz experience brings together the scientific and spiritual perspectives of the future and delivers a key to an interdimensional physics.
Carlos Diaz documents are very important because they show a different category of intelligence, what could be called the bioplasmic form of intelligence that is even beyond the extraterrestrial, which is using metallurgical or physical spacecraft. Here we have seen by computer enhancements of the film actual realities, suggesting that this is a vehicle form that can change its shape, size, geometry in any number of ways. It comes close to what is called in the ancient documents of the prophets of the Western civilization, the Merkaba, or the vehicle of light. In short, we are seeing in the Carlos Diaz material a whole new category of the UFO experience. We are going beyond the extraterrestrial into what could be called the ultra-terrestrial intelligence that is existing in a pure energy state. We are looking at a vehicle where there's no physical door, but has the opportunity to work with morphological energies that will open up a paraphysical door through which the contactee, in this case Carlos Diaz, will move into the vehicle, pass his physical hand through a body of energy, see no physical participants but feel an omnidirectionality of energy. This case merits more study because it signals a graduation of ufology into another category, that of the ultra-terrestrial beings of intelligence, and will open a door to a whole new physics that will accept the possibility that there is a life so advanced that exists in a pure energy form, capable of manifesting itself through superluminal light without a physical form.
Is the Carlos Diaz ship of light an interdimensional gate? A projection from a parallel universe? An alien spacecraft? Why does it appear so frequently over the village of Tepoztlan? Is there any connection to the ancient cultures of Central America? Only the experience of a simple young man from Mexico might be the answer to all these questions.
Es la primera vez que él me invitó conscientemente a entrar a una nave. Vi cómo él se metía a esta neblina de luz.
The first time he invited me to go consciously into a ship, I saw my friend getting in first. He went through this fog-like light. When more than half of his body was inside of the light, his body got sucked into the object. So what I did first is that I put one hand into the light to feel, and to my surprise, it went through the light, and inside I felt a nice temperature. When I took my hand out, I was very relieved to see it was still in one piece. So that gave me the confidence to walk in, and when I had my body halfway inside the object, I was sucked into it too. But once you are into it, there is nothing you can see. You just see yellow light all over. You don't feel your toes, you don't feel the floor, but the sensation is very peculiar, because you feel very peaceful with a lot of love within you.
Me di cuenta que lo que habíamos hecho era salir del objeto, salir de esa gran nave. Y empezamos, me di cuenta que estábamos en el interior de una gran
Once, when I came out of the yellow light, I realized I was not at the same place, but I was in a big cave. It had stalactites and stalagmites, and between them I saw several sculptures and ornaments, which were of the art of the Maya culture. This big cave was the place where the ship hovered, and there was a kind of path we walked through, and we came to another cave, and I saw there many people who were very kind to me and greeted me, very nice people. But the particular thing about this cave was that there were 7 egg-like spheres of yellow light. After we got to this place, my friend stuck his hand into one of the eggs and took out a small ball of light, also yellow, and said that this little ball could project a ray that would touch my 7th vertebrae in the middle of the spine, and it would take all the information which is in my neurons.
Y me dijo que por medio de esta esfera saldría un haz de luz que me colocarían en la 7ª vértebra cervical o a la mitad de la columna. Si yo lo permitía así, tomarían información de todo lo que tuviera yo almacenado en mis neuronas. Después de eso, me
Once I was there in this place, he invited me to go into one of those spheres of light, or eggs of light. When I did so, I realized that all the yellow color changed, and it was not yellow anymore, but it was a scene of a forest from the air. It was like if I was flying. And then I saw on each of my sides a wing, the wing of an eagle, and I realized that what I was looking at was the information from an eagle, his memories, that they had stored into this egg of light.
Que me permitía ver el bosque desde el aire.
Does Carlos' experience indicate a connection to the ancient culture of the Maya, one of the oldest and most mysterious civilizations on the American continent? The Maya were famous for their advanced astronomy, their precise calendar, their mathematics, which were superior to those of contemporary Europe, but also for the splendor and magic of their art and their mighty temple cities in the middle of the jungle. Today, we are still fascinated by the mysteries of this culture, and archaeology had yet failed to uncover its ultimate secrets. Several researchers speculated about a possible extraterrestrial connection. Indeed, the Mayan mythology mentions that sons and elders of the stars teach their people in ancient times and speaks of 400 young men who visited Earth and later returned to the Pleiades.
Once a Mexican investigator and journalist, while my good friend Jaime Musan, asked me to ask them where they come from. So when I was with one of them the next time, we were walking near Mextitla. I asked him, "Where are you from?" And he smiled at me and said, "Look, Carlos, I can give you the name of any star, any constellation, any galaxy. But what would this tell you? As far as you've gotten is your moon. So it makes no sense if I tell you where we come from, since you can't go there and verify." For me, this answer was enough, even though, when I was with them, I once heard them to mention a star named Maya, and when I looked into an astronomy book, I found out that there is, in the constellation of the Pleiades, a star named Maya. Maybe this is where they come from, but I really don't know.
The religion of the Mayas indeed was one which studied the cycles of life, the laws of nature, and the harmony with creation. They celebrated the fertility of the jungle in impressive ceremonies. The Mayan priests and shamans identified themselves and during their rituals became one with animals and plants, with the sacred quetzal bird, the free-flying eagle, the busy ant, the fierce jaguar, or the wise snake. Is it a coincidence that a similar identification with the life forms of Earth in the mystery caves of the X of Life teach Carlos Diaz the necessity to work for a better world, to campaign for a living planet?
Después de eso, salí de la esfera o de este huevo de luz y pude entender que ellos han almacenado en estas esferas de luz muchísima información, no nada más de seres humanos, sino creo que de
After entering these spheres or eggs of life, I understood that they store a great wealth of information in them, not just about human beings, but about all forms, all manifestations of life. They don't only store images, they also store senses. When you are there, you feel like an eagle, like a bird. I felt joy, I felt fear, and I have seen many types of environments: the sea, the ice, jungles. What I have learned from this is that every living thing is important for this wonderful planet. They also offered to show me what they have stored about the past of my own life, but I didn't want to know, because what I want to do is to go forward and to try to act with all the things I have learned to live this experience. I had experienced that there is a wonderful interaction between all living things, but this interaction went out of control. Every individual, every species is an important part of this interaction. This is the reason why I want to share all this with the whole world, to invite the people to act in order to save the earth, to make it a true paradise for all living creatures, and to inherit our future generations a living planet.
Mi experiencia, el tratar de invitar a cuantas personas quieran escuchar que tenemos la posibilidad de seguir haciendo de este nuestro maravilloso hogar, el planeta Tierra, un paraíso. Creo que es importante que les heredemos a las generaciones futuras, como lo he dicho infinidad de veces, un planeta vivo, ¿sí? Un planeta bello.
Al campo de fútbol y espero que se presente algo, puesto que la sensación es bellísima, es muy fuerte, y creo que aquí me van a hacer compañía estos dos buenos amigos. Vámonos, chiquitos, vámonos afuera, vénganse, vamos afuera chiquitos, acompáñenme a un lado, si no nos vamos a caer todos.
In this night in January of 1998, I woke up feeling this very sensation. It was just after midnight. I got up, grabbed my video camera, turned it on, and left the house. I walked the short way to the football field next to my house, followed by my two dogs. I waited out there in the midst of the football field, the camera still running. Since I had nothing better to do, I filmed some stars and the moon as points of reference, and you can see that in the video.
Únicamente luz amarilla. Después de unos cuantos segundos me encuentro fuera de esta luz y es cuando tengo conciencia de que me
Suddenly the ship appeared
dentro
just
de la
above me,
caverna y
a sea of light,
veo a la nave,
yellow light all over. Seconds later I found myself inside of a very big, dark cave. In some distance a ship appeared and disappeared again and again. Just above one great polished rock, nearly circular, on which an encarved image was clearly visible, a triangle surrounded by 3 circles.
A sign? The same symbol appeared in July 1991 in a wheat field near Barbury Castle, England. Its origin, like those of others of the mysterious crop circles, was never satisfactorily explained.
The triangle means the interaction between soul, body and mind, the harmony that should exist between these 3 states of a living being. And the small circles in every corner of the triangle mean the simple ring stands for nature, the circle of life. The one which looks like a wheel stands for movement, and the third one, the spiral, for the evolution of the consciousness of humanity, which in every mind grows like a spiral, and it altogether moves into a higher state. It was meant to teach me exactly what I felt. This is how my experience takes place. They don't talk to me much. They make me feel things and be aware of things. And that's how I've been learning.
Pero no azul de destrucción, de bosques que han muerto de inanición, por desechos de mercurio, de fundición. Blanco como garza cuando cruza los pantanos y blanco como espuma de las olas y la luna, blanco como estrellas que se pierden en la inmensidad, pero no blanco de destrucción, de detergentes y polución. Cuántas cosas vemos sin solución.
Salvemos la tierra de todos nuestros errores. Limpiemos el aire, amemos las plantas y los animales. La madre tierra es la casa en la que todos
verde como loros que en el cielo se despliegan y verde como selvas de lagunas y reservas, verde de delfines que jugando van cubriendo el mar, pero no verde de destrucción, de colorantes y combustión, de seres extintos por ambición.
Salvemos la tierra de todos nuestros errores. Limpiemos el aire, amemos las plantas y los animales. La madre tierra es la casa en la que todos vivimos. A donde nos cambiaremos.
Estamos viviendo un momento realmente histórico para la especie humana. Creo que tenemos que
We are going through a very important state in the human history. We have to realize that the future of us and our planet is in our hands. The world is in the hands of a species which is very creative. We must make the changes with this creativity. We are already going through many transformations. This creativity does the transformations, but these transformations can be positive or they can be negative. And the negative ones are those which are destroying nature, the vitality of the planet.
Las dos partes de la creatividad del hombre, nos daremos cuenta que está dominando más aquella que está acabando con la vitalidad del planeta.
If we don't put into balance the positive and the negative things which we are doing with our own creativity, the negative side will get more and more powerful and destroy life on Earth.
Lo maravilloso que es estar vivos y la maravillosa posibilidad que tenemos de actuar para poder seguir haciendo de este planeta un planeta vivo. Creo que es
My intention in sharing this with you all is to invite people to act so we can keep working for life. I want to invite the people who want to listen, who want to see, who want to do something about it, to work for life on Earth, so we can keep this Earth alive. I don't share my experiences with the world to convince people of the existence of extraterrestrial life, but this experience has made me aware of the wonderful home we have. And I do believe that if we learn to respect and love life, the encounter with them will be inevitable.
A amar y a respetar la vida, el encuentro con ellos es inevitable.
Indeed, it seems that the valley of Tepoztlan, a land considered sacred by its inhabitants even today, is like the eye of a hurricane, an island of peace between man and the nature. Therefore, it doesn't really surprise that it also became a cosmic enclave, an outpost of those who ride on the oceans of the universe. It might very well be the place where contact between man and life forms from somewhere out there already happened, where they learn from us and we, maybe one day, might learn from them, a place where heaven and earth meet.
They come here because here in this very small place, Tepoztlan, are 7 energy belts that cross here. And they use these energy belts to travel like we are using highways. That's why we have so many UFO sightings here. Therefore, it is so familiar to the people in Tepoztlan to see these objects, because they have been here since a long time ago, and for generations people in this place have seen UFOs over the hills.
It's a very magical place. It's very spiritual, it's very beautiful. It has traditions of strong contact with the Aztec gods. It's kind of a spiritual cutting-edge place in the New Age community in Mexico, and there's a political element here, a kind of expression of not wanting to contaminate their environment with resorts, golf courses. To avoid that, there's this kind of consciousness that they have something sacred here and that they don't want to have undermined. So it's an unusual place, and it seems somehow fitting that a man like Carlos should emerge in a place like this.
Besides that, it is also because we don't have a great air force. There is no way we can bother them. So they are safe here. They can operate here, undisturbed, because of the great freedom in Mexico. I do think there already is an open contact. If the contact is not being done or signed by politicians, it doesn't mean there is no open contact. They do live amongst us, and they are here since hundreds and thousands of years. They are here trying to understand why we act the way we do. They have learned many things from us. They even admire us as a species, because they say that we have evolved faster than they did as a civilization. But because of this hurry in our evolution, we do not really realize the damage we are doing to our planet in order to have more technology. The activity of the volcanoes in Mexico and elsewhere in the world is just an answer to the aggression we are directing against the planet. All these nuclear tests have been done in so many countries, and now there's the answer to it, the volcanic activity which liberates the energy here in Mexico and all over the world.
From 1991 up until now, many people have been reporting around the volcano activity of UFOs. And what is really interesting is that this activity, it seems to be related to the activity of this very dangerous volcano. Many volcanologists think that this is the most dangerous volcano in the world because of its history and because there are so many people living very nearby this volcano. They were fleets with 5, 7, 10, 12 objects. We have even some pictures of that which prove very clearly that is true. Many other people say that these objects have descended close to the volcano and they have seen even extraterrestrials close to the ships. The sightings, every time we're going to have activity of the volcano increase. For example, as I said, in 1991-92, we found out that the volcano was active because there was so much activity. Then we have a lot of activity after the middle part of 1994. By the end of 94, we were predicting probably some possibility of eruption, and this happened on December 21st, 1994. And then on September 18th, 1998, we were in Puebla and we had many reports of many witnesses of 7 objects flying very close to the volcano, and we predicted new activity and new big eruptions. And from November 19th, 1998, we are living a new stage. We think is the final stage of this very dangerous volcano. This mountain could blow up, killing hundreds of thousands of people. It could become the biggest disaster ever in human history.
Es dar a conocer la experiencia vivida por Carlos Díaz durante 19 años con estos seres llamados luz.
The purpose of the center is to make the material and message of Carlos Díaz available, material which has been collected for over 18 years now and has been verified by experts and scientists from all over the world. But it is also to help people which have seen for the first time a UFO, like me, as I was very shocked when I saw a UFO for the first time. The center wants to explain this reality to the people.
Una necesidad o una inquietud que no se puede comentar con cualquier persona, las cuales no han tenido un acercamiento o un avistamiento de esta índole. Entonces, este centro va a recibir a todo ese tipo de gentes que necesiten de alguna explicación para poder hacer descansar a su mente de ese impacto que reciben la primera vez que ven un objeto no identificado.
Afortunadamente hemos podido establecer una
The center, the organization we are beginning to open, will let people know about the reality of the UFOs and help in the preservation of life on Earth.
E invitar a la gente a actuar como ellos han aprendido a hacerlo en favor de la preservación de la vida.